And I think here we are. Yes, we are live. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. It's Saturday morning. It's story time. In Florida, the weather is just perfect. It's just incredible. The skies are blue, little white fluffy clouds everywhere. Mind you, it was like this yesterday until about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when all of a sudden there were downpours of rain, which we're thrilled about because, you know, it waters the grass and so on and so forth. So, and I was lucky to get a couple of hours sitting outside anyway before the rain came down. So, all right, so it's story time, and what story should I tell you today? I've already decided on what story it's going to be. This story is going to be in probably two parts, because prior to me telling you this story, I'm going to give you a little bit of information that you may or may not know about how I work. Now, let's be really clear about this. Not every medium works in the same way. People have their own different ways of connecting, their own different ways of communicating, and they have their own different ways of doing stuff. I'm very fortunate because I've got Grey Eagle, who is, by the way, by my side. So let's say good morning to Grey Eagle. And then also we do have our remote, Michelle. remote. Say good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, everybody.
So Michelle's here to answer all of your questions and what have you, and we will have time for questions later. But before we go into this particular story, I do need to sort of clarify a few things, because I don't want anybody wondering and thinking, you know, how did she do that then? So as I've said, every medium works differently. People have different ways of communicating, connecting, sensing, so on and so forth. And I, in some ways, am unique in that, first of all, I have a spirit guide who is very, let's say, hands-on with me, has taught me many things over the years. And I also, not only am I a spiritual medium, I'm also a healer. So I sort of can come at this subject from a whole different aspects, which is great for me. Now, we have to go back, first of all, to way in, not quite the beginning of when I first started this, but when I first started opening our healing centers. I shouldn't say I should say our healing centers, because I had a whole team of people who worked with me, and of course also Grey Eagle. And in one of these centers, we had our lovely Mavis and Joyce, who were our tea ladies, who would they would be great. They would be there every single week, volunteering, just as we all were, to make tea for all of the people who came in, the patients, people who were sick, a lot of people who were sick and had no hope of recovery, and so on and so forth. And we had at one point a patient who had lung cancer. He was lovely. His name was Colin. I was just going to say we'll make up a name, but then I remembered his name is Colin. He was lovely, tall, dark, handsome, probably in his mid to late 50s, somewhere like that. And he came in not looking for a cure, not looking to be healed and, you know, getting rid of the cancer. He came in because he was one of those people. He had been interested and curious about spiritual things for many years, and he just wanted to see what we were all about. And one of the first things he said to me was, "I'm not here for you to cure me, Rosemary, because it's my time." But he really just wanted to know all about us. And after we had our healing session with people, we had a tea room. Mavis and Joyce would make the tea for people. And then we'd sit in a group, we'd sit in a circle, and the patients had a chance to ask questions, either of myself or of any of the healers who were there. And this particular night, Colin looked at me and he said, I don't want to ask you a question, Rosemary. He said, I want to ask your grey eagle a question. And I smiled and I said, off you go then, whatever it is you want to ask. And he said, I want Grey Eagle to tell me what the universe is like. Now, my mind is, wow, that's a huge question. I'm looking at Grey Eagle as I'm saying this, because this is a memory that we have. And I'm thinking, goodness, that's a huge question. I don't think we've got time. And I was just about to say to Colin, I don't think we've really got time to answer that question, Colin. I wasn't sure how we were going to answer. I mean, what is the universe like? Wow, what a question. And Grey Eagle put his hand on my shoulder and he smiled at me and he said, don't worry, he said, just tell him the universe is like holes in a cheese. And as soon as Grey Eagle said that to me, I never thought about it before, but as soon as Grey Eagle said that to me, I totally understood. Holes in a cheese, this enormous sphere, which goes beyond anything that we can see or understand. Even the biggest and the best telescopes can't see beyond a certain point. But imagine the universe is this enormous sphere. Imagine that it's like holes in a cheese, and the way that they put holes in a cheese is they use these thin red hot wires that they then push through a big round ball of cheese, and they push it through from end to end, and it sort of makes almost like little tunnels going through the cheese. You've seen them, those cheeses, like an Emmenthal or something similar to that. And so I could imagine this enormous universe with this sort of like, almost like a grid going through it. Some of the tunnels crossing, some of them running parallel, some of them turning, twisting, bending. And I thought, wow, that makes perfect sense, because by this time I'd already experienced astral traveling. I'd already experienced myself going through a tunnel, going down the tunnel. We hear the stories of when people who've passed, they tell us about how they go down the tunnel, or how they see somebody waiting at the edge of a tunnel for them as they're about to pass. So makes perfect sense. So I said to Colin, okay, Grey Eagle says the universe is like holes in a cheese, and he, like me, immediately got it. He says, oh, he said, I did wonder about that. He said, that makes perfect sense. So okay, so fast forward. Now I'm going to tell you just a little bit about how I work as a medium. Do not ask me to explain it. I can tell you what happens. I don't always know why it happens, and I often don't know quite how it happens, but there are so many times that I've done this, and I don't know that I'm unique in this as a medium, whether Grey Eagle and I use this method and it's unique just to us, but I do have to say I've never heard of anyone else using this method or understanding or even talking about this method for themselves. So as far as right at this moment is concerned, I can say that as far as I am aware, this method is unique to Grey Eagle and myself. Okay, very often we can be talking to someone in the spirit world. I can be talking to a person in the spirit world, and they want to say to me, they want to tell me what happened. But there's only so much that they can say, or there's only so many ways that they can say it. But if they really want me to understand what happens, what really happened, and they want to give me the exact and the most intricate detail, very often what happens, and this is where it gets weird, and I know that it gets weird, but very often what happens is I will find myself, even I can do this in a hall with thousands of people, I can do this in a room with 10 people. I mean, these things, when it happens, it simply happens. It's not that I've got any particular control over it. And if it were happening and you were, say we're sitting in my living room and it were happening, you would never know that it were happening. I would just look perfectly normal and ordinary to you. So when I say this happens even in front of thousands of people, to those thousands of people looking at me and listening, they just think that this is me and I'm normal. This is, but when I say normal, we know I'm not really, but, I'm just like a normal, ordinary human being. Nobody quite understands or knows what's happening, except for those who know me really, really well will say that they can see when it's happening because my eyes do these weird things. Of course, I've never seen it myself, so I don't know. So here's what happens. And don't ask me to explain it, because I can't. But, so, when someone is trying to describe to me, or they want me to see the accident that happened that killed them, or they want me to understand that they were in the middle of a house fire, and they want me to be there to see, to be the watcher actually watching and seeing these things. I feel myself, gets weird, I feel myself moving back. It's almost as if I'm going back and then down and through the hole. You might want to call it the tunnel. I feel myself going back and down and through a tunnel, which will take me to the time and the place that I'm going to see the accident, or I'm going to see someone who's dying in a fire. I'm going to, see what exactly happened to a person, and it's almost as if I'll be standing on the edge of that time, and I'll be standing as the watcher, watching as these things happen. I know it's weird, right? It's weird. But I can't interfere. I'm just in a place and a time. I've been taken back in time to that place, to that space, to that, as a watcher, to that accident, or to that moment when a person dies, or that moment when a person is taking their own life, or whatever it is. I cannot interfere. It's already happened anyway, so I can't stop it, I can't change it, but I'm going back out of my body. There is a part of me that moves back out of my body, back and down and through the hole, which takes me into another time and another place. Weird, right? I understand it. I don't understand it, but I understand that you might think it's weird. I understand that you might be very skeptical about it. And geez, if I was listening to somebody saying this, I would certainly be skeptical about it. So, having said that, I'm going to describe again to you what happens, and then I'm going to begin our Saturday morning story. Sorry to go so long-winded around it all, but I know there are so many of you out there who really, really do want to understand the process, or you want to know more about the process, and it is a fascinating thing that happens. When we leave our body, when we die, for instance, so many people think that we sort of move forward, we come out this way. Maybe some people do. When I have out-of-body experiences, my out-of-body experiences are always experienced with, first of all, with me going backwards. I'm literally going backwards. And so I feel myself, even if I'm standing with a microphone talking to an audience, I will feel this part of me that goes back and down and through the hole, is what I call it. It's a little bit like an Alice in Wonderland thing, going down the rabbit hole, going back and down and through the tunnel or through the hole to a time and a place that someone in the spirit world maybe wants me to go, or maybe wants me to be, so that I can actually see what is happening. Having said that, here we go with this story, which always, as you know, begins with once upon a time. Am I making myself clear, Michelle, about any of this? Is it
Yeah, I'm following along.
is it weird?
I don't think so, but
Okay.
I'm not normal either, so.
Okay then. So I became involved for a time in a local project. Here I live in a beach town in Florida, and this local project was about saving an old circus building. I can't remember whether it's Barnum and Bailey or anyway, it's some big circus that used to be there. And in fact, there's a bridge that goes over that from my house. You cross over the bridge to go into the town itself, and it's called the Circus Bridge, and it's where the old circus used to be. And it's not, as you would imagine, a big top. It's not, it's not the big tent that goes up or anything. This building was a permanent circus, so it's a permanent circus building. I think it's been knocked down now. I think it's pretty much been knocked down. It's still there? Is it still? I'm asking.
Yes, that was the Ringling Brothers building, because John and Mabel Ringling, that's where they wintered, was on the island.
Okay. So I think it might have been Barnum and Bailey. No? Ringling then. Let's go for Ringling. We don't really care, do we, anyway? But Ringling was one of the biggest circuses in the world. So, and as Mary Lou said, they used to winter in Florida, and this was the permanent site for their circus. So it's an enormous building, huge building, not especially high. We're not talking about high-rise thing, but it had, sort of had a nice sort of fairly high roof and sort of, anyway. And sat, or still sits then, in a place, so you can still go and see this thing. So it's in what looks like an abandoned parking lot. It's massive though. The place is massive, and not only is there the big old what we might see as a big top, but it was a solid building, a big top solid building. What we see there. There was also sort of on the other side of looks like this big abandoned parking lot is another building which apparently used to house the animals, and they had horses and they had different things, but they also had big cats. And so anyway, I'm digressing here. So the place has been abandoned for years and years and years, but there was a movement, a group of people who wanted to get money from the town to rebuild it, to build it back up to what it used to be, and potentially to use it for a circus again. So I sort of got to know 2 or 3 of the people who were involved in this project. One of the people was himself a circus man, and he had actually, as a young boy, worked in this particular circus, and he was all into trapezes and things, and he still has his trapeze stuff out there. You can see it now, and he has people going for trapeze lessons and all the rest of it. Anyway, so okay, so I got involved with these people, and of course they knew me, and they knew I was psychic and all the rest of it. And we were in a pub one night chatting about it, and they were telling me that they believed that the circus was haunted, and would I be interested in going to this abandoned building and looking to see if I could see anything or hear anything or whatever. So I agreed. It sounded interesting to me. So we park our car. Again, the whole place is abandoned. The building, although it's sort of safe, is a little dodgy. The roof is, almost non-existent. There are big holes in the roofs. You go up into the rafters and you can see, of course it's unusable. It still has all the benches, or did when I was there, still had all the benches all the way around. And this arena was actually a 3-ringed circus, which means that it had a central ring and then on either side it had 2 smaller rings, which meant that at any given time you could see you would be seeing 3 circuses in one. The central circus was had the trapezes and all of that stuff, and then the smaller ones would have the clowns and the dogs and whatever, you know what circuses are like. So when I pulled up, and I'm thinking, gosh, it really looks really dilapidated. It's really, obviously it's been at least, I don't know, 60, 70, maybe even 80 years before anybody's even been in here, and it was falling down, and every now and again the town would come along and say, we need to knock it down and put something else there, and then this group of people who were intent on saving the circus, they would, they'd all get together and so on. So this stuff was going on. So I pull in my car. It's broad daylight. It's a glorious sunny Florida day, as it can only be in Florida. The sun was beating down and it was really bright and so on. There were 2 cars in the car park, the 2 guys who I was actually meeting to go in there, and then of course there was mine, and everything else was abandoned. Massive area, completely abandoned. I get out of the car. The guys are waiting for me. We say hello and so on, and we then start to walk towards the main building, towards the main circus area. And remember now, going down and back and down and through the hole, I never know when it's going to happen. And again, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. In other words, I can do this and still nobody, unless you really knew me really well, nobody would really know that anything was actually happening to me. So we start to walk towards the building, and as we start to walk towards the building, I can hear music. And, I'm a skeptical person, right? I'm not, just because I hear music doesn't mean I'm going to think, oh, it's ghostly stuff. I'm going to think, first and foremost, well, this could very well be my imagination at work here. Definitely could be my imagination at work. Nevertheless, I hear the music, and as I walk towards the door, the entrance, which is all locked and bolted, but as I walk towards the building, I'm aware of the smells, and I'm aware of a crowd. I'm aware of a very large fat man and his very large fat wife standing by a candy floss, as you call it in America, cotton candy stall, and waving a cotton candy at me, and they're smiling at me, and I'm waving and smiling back, and they're trying to tempt me to buy candy floss and toffee apples. And so I'm looking at them and I'm smiling, and they're smiling back. They know I'm not buying anything, but they're smiling. And it occurs to me that they're so big and they're so fat and they're so gorgeous and jolly and happy. And I think, boy, I bet they eat more candy than they sell. But anyway, so I'm hearing the noises, and I can smell what smells like hot dogs. And when you go to a really busy circus and you've got all these sights and smells that are going on, as I get closer and closer to the building, I'm aware of all of these sights and sounds, and it feels to me like I'm smack right in the middle of it all. But I'm also aware of these 2 guys who are giving me the history of the place, and I'm sort of nodding at them, but I'm also really somewhere else, and I am somehow back in time, watching all this stuff going on. And as I step through the doors, it's this, I'm sure you've had it, that wow moment, that seriously wow moment, because all 3 of these circuses are well and truly active. There's this gorgeous creature, beautiful, slim, very pretty woman, swinging on the trapeze with her handsome partner who's catching her. There's the clowns, there's the music, there's so much going on, and I'm standing there and I'm completely in awe of everything. Now these two guys are now obviously thinking maybe they should give me some space, because what they see is just me looking around and perhaps listening or perhaps getting a feel for things. They have no clue what it is that I'm seeing, absolutely no clue whatsoever. But I am completely immersed in the circus as it used to be, which was to me enthralling. And I'm looking around, and every now and again a clown or somebody would look up and wave at me. So I knew that they could see me, and I knew that they were aware of me. And it was as if they had invited me to this private showing of this 3-ring circus. So, okay, now I'm there and I remind myself, look here, I'm here in an official capacity now, so I have to get myself together. And I decide I'm going to head, and I say to the guys, I'm going to just walk around and do my thing. And they sort of go off and do whatever they're doing. And I walk over to the very far side of this building. I have to watch where I'm stepping because the floors are cracked. There are iron bars here and there. There's trash all over the floor. So I slowly pick my way through until I get to the far end of this building and prop myself up. I sit myself up on one of the benches that aren't falling to pieces, and I'm just sitting there, and I have a pen and a pencil in my hand because I'd sort of decided I would take some notes, but I was so fascinated with what was going on. So I just sat there and I watched all of this, and I watched all of this going on, and they were literally putting on a performance for me. And so I'm sitting there and I'm entranced in all of this, when all of a sudden I realise, you know how you get one of those feelings and you just know, you don't necessarily see somebody behind you, but you have a sense that somebody's come up to you. And I have a sense of this person coming up to me and standing behind me, and I hear this voice, and it's a sort of slurred, a little bit slurred voice, saying to me, how do you like what you see so far? And I turn and I see this I'm going to say giant of a man. He was so tall. I've never seen anyone quite as tall as this man. But the first thing I notice as his face looms close to me, his face is crooked. It's sort of on sideways. So instead of his mouth being where it should be, it's sort of somewhere up here. Instead of his chin being central, it's also sort of up here. He is hunched, completely hunched over, but he's also twisted because obviously his spine is somehow twisted as well. So he's definitely sort of twisted, and he's hunched, and pretty scary looking guy, I have to say to you. Very scary looking. And I look at him and I smile and I say, I think it's marvelous. And he smiles at me, but as he smiles at me, it's this big gaping hole in his face as he's smiling and nodding at me. And the only way I can tell that he's smiling is because his eyes are sparkling. But he is the weirdest looking character, extremely deformed, and these long arms and these enormously tall, long legs. And he says to me, can I sit next to you? And I nod and I say, of course you can. And he sits next to me, and we have a little conversation, and he's telling me that he gives me the name of the woman on the trapeze, and he tells me what's going on, and then he says to me, and of course you haven't seen them yet, but then there are the cats and so on. And it's hard sometimes to understand what he's saying because there's sort of this very weird echo in his voice. but he is so kind and so gentle, and I have a feeling when I'm sitting with him, I have a feeling of really wanting to protect him, because I understand that he is the crooked man. He tells me, with the circus since he was very small, that this is his family. He's never known anything else. And when he speaks to me of his family, he speaks to me with such warmth and such tenderness about his family, who are the circus people who took him in, because, let's face it, there was nowhere else he could have ever gone. There is nowhere else that would have ever accepted him. But yet his family embraced him and protected him and took care of him. So at some point he says to me, okay, I have to go now, but enjoy the rest of your stay. And I said, thank you. And he smiled and he stood up and he loomed over me. He said, I'll see you again. And I'm thinking, wow, well, I hope so, but I don't know when. And he disappears into thin air, or so it would seem. Then one of the two guys I'm with, who's invited me to come in and take a look at this old dilapidated place, comes up to me and says, Rosemary, I don't want to interrupt you, but what do you think so far? And I said, oh, I think it's fascinating, but I said, I've been told that the circus had cats, is that right? And he started to tell me about the cats, and a very famous man, I think his name was Gunther, who at that time he was the one who trained the big cats. So I said to him, is it possible for me to see where these cats were kept? So we went outside of the building. As I'm going out, all of these fabulous people, nobody else can see but me, they're all waving at me and I'm waving back and smiling, and they just are having a blast with their performance. And we went outside, and on the far side of this abandoned place was an old, it's fairly large, I'm going to call it a shed, but it was fairly large shed. And we went in there, and there was a ring, literally, like you could imagine a small circus ring. And around the ring were sort of you could walk around it, I knew, even before I got to the building, I absolutely knew that this was the cat house. And I stepped inside, and I'm looking around. At first I don't really see anything, and then whoosh, and all of a sudden I see this most amazing black panther, the most incredible, beautiful, beautiful, cat. And so I say to the two guys who are with me now, I said, they had a black panther, and they looked at me first of all as if, oh, how does she know that? And then smiled and said, well, only for a short time, but it was so dangerous they couldn't keep it. I saw other cats as well, again going back and down and through the hole. I was able to see the cats, and some of the cats performing and just strolling around and strutting around. It was extremely impressive. We didn't spend as long in that place as we spent in the big circus arena, and we eventually came out, and these two guys were walking me back to my car, and they're wanting to know, well, what do you think? Do you think it really is haunted? Then what do you think? Are the stories true? Are the old circus people, do they come here still? And if so, what do they wanted to do with the building? What would they like to see happen to it? And I have no idea quite why, but I said to them, what I'd really love to do is I'd like to come back one evening. I'd just love to come back one evening and see what the atmosphere is like at night in this place. Now, you do all know I don't believe that ghosts only come out at night. So it wasn't a question of, sort of going into a spooky place dark at night. But I wanted to sort of feel the atmosphere. I wanted to see if what I could see at night time. I wanted to perhaps even get to know some of the circus people, maybe a little bit more. Maybe they would come and talk to me. As I'd been walking around, one of the guys, and this one particular guy, had worked in this circus as a young man, as a young boy. And he had, unbeknownst to me, he had a very good friend who also worked in the circus. And as I was walking around the cat house with him, and as I was walking back through the car park, I could see this friend, this man who was older than him, but I could see him quite clearly walking alongside of his. Now, you couldn't miss him because he was a huge guy. He had shoulders on him like huge muscles like this, and he was a fascinating guy, and he was laughing, and he said to me, told me that he was a friend. They'd been boyhood friends. He was older, but still they had been boyhood friends, worked in the circus together, and that he was the strong man. And when I mentioned this to the guy I was with, he began to cry because they were best friends, and the strong man had died very suddenly. I can't remember now why or how, but he had died very suddenly and unexpectedly. He was not that old when he died. He was only somewhere in his 50s when he died. But when I described him, this guy nodding, looking at me, he's saying that's exactly how he was, and was so blown away that his friend, the strong man, was walking with us and taking stock of what was going on. So I said to the two guys, is it possible then for me to come one night? Can I come one night and take a look, and maybe the two of you can come with me, and maybe a couple of you can get a couple of other people, and we'll see what happens. And so I'm thinking, I wonder if they'll be willing to do it, and they said yes. And how about, why don't we do it next Thursday, they said to me. So I said, okay. Next Thursday is really good, and I started smiling to myself, thinking, next Thursday is the 19th of May. What a great birthday to be able to go to the circus. Was I going to see the circus in all its glory again? Was I going on a spooky birthday night? Who knew? So we arranged that we would meet at 10 o'clock the next Thursday, because I'd planned a dinner with a friend of mine, and I said I can't make it until 10 o'clock at night, and they agreed, and it was fine, and they set up the meeting for the following Thursday night, which was my birthday night. When I told my friend Mary Lou, who was the person I was having dinner with on my birthday, she said, well, you can't leave me out of it. I'm buying you dinner, so the least you can do is take me to the circus. So that's what we planned to do. And we planned to go the following Thursday on my birthday night to see what we could see. I got into my car, but as I'm climbing into the car, again I see the two fat people, the man and the lady, who had such jolly smiling faces. I could see them standing outside the circus where they always used to stand, selling candy floss and selling their toffee apples, and they waved at me as I got into the car, and I caught the briefest glimpse of the crooked man before I drove away. Again, he was tall, so tall. I've never seen a man so tall. He almost looked as if he was wearing stilts. His shoulders were bent. His head was twisted to one side. His spine was so twisted around that you could see that he couldn't. It was almost as if he was back to front in some ways. and I caught a brief glimpse of him, and I heard a whisper of his voice as he said, "We'll be here and waiting for you next week. I did say I'd see you soon." And I heard a chuckle, and I knew that one way or another we were definitely going to the circus on my birthday. That's the end of this week's story. Next week, Mary Lou has agreed, and in fact, she said to me, "Can I come too? Can I be in on story time too?" Because she wants to hear and to join in, because she wants to tell you all what she heard and what she saw. Now, did we actually see anything? It was dark. The moon was bright, big in the sky. As we got out of the car in the darkened car park, our friends were with us. There was a little crowd of them, 3 or 4 of them. They were carrying these lamps, sort of like hurricane lamps, so that we could see. We stepped inside. It was dark. The only thing that you could see was the moon glinting through the roof, through the holes in the roof. We gathered chairs together and we sat in a circle just outside of the circus arena. We sat and we waited. What happened, do you think? Did we see anything? Did we hear anything? Was it spooky, or was it just a normal evening for me? I have to tell you, it was a little bit spooky, and I'll tell you the rest of the story with Mary Lou next week. Okay, so it's not the end, but it's the pause in the middle of the story. All right, so Michelle, did you like that story?
That story hits home for me because as a little girl, I used to watch them march the animals over the circus bridge.
Oh, did you?
To take them to the winter retreat.
All right. Yeah.
So
there are a lot of people who have wonderful memories of that place. But anyway, you'll hear the rest of it next week. So I know that we've got a few people making comments, any questions, whatever's going on. So over to you, Michelle.
Yep, we're going to start from the beginning. Lots of good mornings. Dean may or may not be with us. He said the weather is gorgeous there right now.
Oh, good.
Reese is on. He said he's listening and it's raining.
Hi, my darling boy. Hi, my darling Reese. I want to know if he's enjoying the story so far, because I'm sure he likes circuses. I'm wondering if we've ever taken him to a circus. And if not, we have to rectify it, don't we, Reese? We have to make sure that we do take you to a circus. Okay, keep going.
There's a circus museum up in Sarasota, too, that's from down here. It's from the circus that used to be down here.
Yeah.
Maggie said, happy last day of your birthday week.
I might extend it. Maggie, thank you. And thank you for the cake. Michelle, I gave Michelle one of the cakes. The other one is in the freezer. Of course, you know that my favorite is the chocolate. So as much as I love the cakes, you know, I don't care about the cakes so much. The chocolate, oh gosh, were they delicious. You are such a lovely person to think of me on my birthday, Maggie. Okay, keep going.
Wendy said that they're driving an hour and a half to spend the weekend with their friend. Okay. So story time is perfect. They get to listen on the way.
Oh.
Happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody.
Oh gosh, is it Memorial Day?
Monday is.
Okay, all right then. Okay, so it's a long weekend for everybody. Oh, well, I hope Wendy enjoyed the story. So keep going.
Ivy said, "Good morning, Rosemary. Namaste.
Good.
Asian and live in my late 30s and from Canada, and I'm reading your book, The Eagle and the Rose, and just can't put it down.
Oh, bless
Extraordinary. Just finished doing your meditation on a journey towards healing. Amazing meditation that should be done by everyone. So much color and love that you give is astounding.
Ivy.
Much love, thanks.
Ivy, that's so sweet. You can read the circus story in much more detail, I have to say, than we have time for on story time. But you can read that in my new book, which is A Walk in the Clouds, which is a great book to read too. Lots and lots of stories, and the circus story is in there. In fact, look, see, there it is, A Walk in the Clouds. Okay, I'm glad you're enjoying The Eagle and the Rose, Ivy. Keep going. Yeah.
Bill said, thank you for sharing your gifts with us.
You're very welcome.
Maggie would like to know, without Gray Eagle, if you would have experienced the moving, would you have stopped yourself when you moved back to go through the tunnel?
It's hard to say, Maggie. I can't answer that one because I've never really been without Gray Eagle, so I don't know. But yes, my very first experience, out-of-body experience, and I do tell that story. I do believe it's in The Eagle and the Rose, where I was it's sort of going back into Victorian times and going, sort of traveling. But there were many times. With Gray Eagle, there were many times when, either sort of you're just really nicely relaxed, or you're about to go to sleep, or you're sort of coming out of that sleep state into the sort of that you're waking up, but you're nicely relaxed. There were many times when I had this experience, and it's the weirdest experience when you have an out-of-body experience, because I don't know if you've ever sat on an aeroplane. When the aeroplane starts up, and you put your head on the window and you've got this vibration, like it's deep inside of you, and that's what it's like. And that, let me tell you, that's scary. It's almost as if we're revving up. When I do the down and back and through the whole thing, and I will tell more stories and give more examples of that as we go along, but when I do that, it's not, you don't get that same vibration, because it's not as if I'm actually, the whole of myself is leaving my physical body. It's just a part of me which is being able to move and go down and back, so that I can see really clearly. I can go back to a time and a place and see in the most incredible detail exactly what happened, how life was, and so on. It's a fascinating thing to be able to do. But I've never actually been scared to do that, because it's just something that, well, it's happening. So because it's happening, you just get on with it. You know how if you're in a crowd of people and they're all moving along in the same direction, and you end up moving in the same direction, even if you wanted to go somewhere else, you end up just sort of going with the flow. And it's sort of rather like that, Maggie.
All right, the next one is from Lewis, and he says, good morning from Arizona.
Morning. Oh, one of my favorite places in the whole world. I love Arizona. Go on. Yeah.
He said, may I have Gray Eagle in your blessing, please?
Certainly. Yes, absolutely. You can have whatever you like. We'll certainly send blessings to you. Absolutely.
Judith says, hello all from beautiful morning in Georgia.
Hi. Oh, have I been to Georgia? I might have been through Georgia. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
And Maggie said, Rosemary, do I have to wait? LOL.
For what?
Probably for the rest of the story.
I don't know. Do you, Maggie? It is a good story, and I thought that, you would all love to hear from someone who is my friend Mary Lou. She's absolutely not psychic. She's perfectly, she's lovely. She's ordinary. She's sort of comes into this. She's sort of got the enthusiasm of someone who's learning about this stuff. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun for people to hear her side of things, of what happened, instead of just me telling you what happened? Wouldn't it be fun if you heard it from someone who isn't psychic and isn't able to see or to sense? And does that mean she didn't hear anything or see anything? Find out next Saturday.
Okay, this next one it's a long one.
Go for it.
It's from Lisa.
Good morning,
And
Lisa.
she said, the Circus Bridge is no ordinary bridge, although one wouldn't know its historic significance by merely looking at it or even driving over it. But it's played a huge part in the celebration each and every year in Venice for more than 3 decades, as the animals from Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey were unloaded from the circus train each winter and marched across the bridge. The crowds would gather and celebrate and cheer to the end of their long season.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, and I do think, although we had this little discussion earlier on, Michelle did not think Barnum and Bailey were involved, but I think
it was both Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey.
Yeah, I think Barnum and Bailey were involved as well. So, Lisa, thank you for that. And gosh, I bet that was a sight to see. I bet that was a real sight to see, with all the animals, all the circus animals and the clowns and all the stuff coming across that bridge. I bet it was a real sight to see. So
they did it up until the early 90s.
Pardon?
It was up until about the early 90s when they stopped doing it.
Oh, really? Really? I'm wondering if anybody out there knows when the circus building itself, when they stopped having the circus there, because let me tell you, when I went in there, it's not so long ago that this happened, the circus story that I'm telling you about. It's not that long ago. But boy, oh boy, the place was in such disrepair. I'd love to know when the last performance was in that. So, get out your history books, everybody. See if you can find out for me. Isn't it exciting, though, when you hear a story and you know the area, or you know the building, or you know what it is? It makes it more real, don't you think? Keep going, Michelle.
Yeah. I love the story because I remember this all being a little kid and watching them march across and seeing the winter circuses and doing the different things.
Right. So you're really relating to this story then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember seeing the last year that they actually performed there. I don't remember what year it was.
Okay.
But I'll find out for you. I'll ask my dad. He'll tell me.
That's great. Any more questions? Any comments? Anything going on out there?
Dee said, "What a beautiful story, so vivid and colorful. Thank you for sharing."
Who was that?
Dee.
Who?
Dee.
Dee. Thank you, Dee. And we've only gotten halfway through.
Sarita said it reminds her of a poem, the poem of the Crooked Man.
There was a little nursery story, and the Crooked Man reminded me of this. There was a crooked man who walked a crooked mile. He climbed a crooked... Wait a minute. There was a crooked man.
That's the one she's talking about.
There was a crooked man who lived in a crooked house. He walked a crooked mile and climbed over a crooked stile. I can't remember the rest of it, but anyway, I used to say that to my daughter when she was little. This man, it's hard for us to imagine, but circuses and fairgrounds and so on, they used to have, the bearded lady, for instance, and they used to have all of these people who were, in fact, they had things that were incurable. And obviously this man, the crooked man, he obviously had some kind of a disease of some kind, which may well be curable today. But in those days, people had to live with their deformities, and people had to live with such awful, awful things. And it was only places like fairgrounds and circuses that these people were accepted. Of course, a lot of them were treated cruelly, as we know, but I can assure you that the crooked man that I spoke to had warm and wonderful feelings for his circus people, and they treated him wonderfully. Any more questions or comments, Michelle?
Cheryl would like to know how you and Grey Eagle met.
Read The Eagle and the Rose, young lady. It'll tell you all about it. Now, that is also another story, because Yeah, it was amazing. That was amazing. One day I'll tell it as a story, maybe. Can you put it down on the list, Michelle, as one of the stories we should tell?
Yes, ma'am.
But not today. Yeah, keep going.
Jane said, "Hi,
Hi,
Rosemary.
Jane.
First time catching you. Sending love from Cornwall, England."
Oh, I wonder which town. We used to go to Cornwall on a very regular basis, and the first time I ever had Cornish pasties, of course, was in Cornwall. And they were the best, the very, very best. And of course, since then I've made my own, which are also pretty good, but you can't beat a warm Cornish pasty as you're sitting on a beach in Cornwall. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world, fabulous part of the world. Jane, let me know whereabouts you are. All right, keep going.
Okay, so the next one is from Ivy. And
Hi,
she
Ivy.
said, "Do you know if you were also psychic, medium, and a healer in your past life? And will you still be one in your future life? Do psychics have a different type of soul purpose than normal souls? Much love, thanks."
Gosh, there's so many questions in there. You know, I have a very different idea of past lives than most people do. So I'm going to suggest you go back and look at our all the YouTube shows that we've done, our Everything is Attitude shows. We do talk on there from time to time about past lives and past life regression and all of that stuff. So I'm not going this too long a story to tell here. Do spiritual mediums have a different purpose? I don't know. I know that Grey Eagle tells me that we were together prior to my coming to this earth plane. I always joke and say that that we must have had a debate who's going and who's staying, you know, who's going to be thrown into the lion's den, which is this world of ours. Who's going to go and who's going to stay? But I actually think that I don't know. I think Grey Eagle got the short end of the stick. I think he drew the short straw, in other words, because boy oh boy, he has to deal with me, right? So and that he's laughing, and that has to be one of the toughest jobs ever, because I am so critical and so questioning, and I'm always saying why all the time. So I know that we were together prior to my birth here on this earth plane, and I do believe that we should be continuing on this path, the two of us, as we move forward with our learning and our growth. I'm not quite sure what my role will be. I'm hoping he continues with his role as the teacher and as the mentor, helping and guiding me. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. Carol said, "Happy belated birthday, Rosemary."
Hi, Carol. I just want to say thank you. I mean, I've had so many people saying happy birthday. So thank you for all of you. And it was on Tuesday, but I did start my birthday last Sunday, and I suppose I should end it today. We'll see. I just want to give another shout out to my darling grandson. He's probably got bored and he's off the air now, but anyway, he might, as he grows older, he might come back and listen to this. So I just want to say I love you more, my darling. Keep going, Michelle.
All right. Sarita would like to know, she has a question that has to do with you mentioning seeing things in the massive synchronicity here. But she would like to know what your views are on Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Who knows? I don't even know who they are. Should I know who Ed and Lauren are? If you would like to send me more information about that, please. I've never heard of them. So I don't think anything of them, because I don't know who they are, my darling. But if you'd like to let me have more information, I'll give you my idea.
Ivy said, during this time, do you do a group meditations through Zoom?
Yes, we do. Every Wednesday afternoon, we do. It's the show is called Hands Around the World, Healing Hands Around the World, and we join. And I certainly do healing meditation every Wednesday afternoon at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. I like to think that's not so bad because it means 1:30 means 6:30 if you're in England, or 6 or 7:30 if you're in Europe, wherever. So it gives people an opportunity to, if you're working, or if you can always make it that time, or you can always play it back. So again, you need to look on everything that we do. Michelle, bless her, uploads or downloads or whatever that is onto YouTube, right? So
yeah, by default.
So you can find all of these shows on YouTube, or just simply go back on Facebook and you can check it out on Facebook, and you can check out this last Wednesday on Facebook where we do a definite. It's sort of it's healing. It's about healing, and it's certainly sort of like a guided meditation where I'm suggesting to you that you try to visualize, or you try to use your energy, and so on and so forth. Yes, absolutely. And guess what? It's free. So you can just go in and tune in there and just, get it all for free. Michelle.
We do that on the Healing Book on Facebook.
Yes, we do it. This is on my main Facebook. The Storytime is on my main Facebook page, but we have a healing page which we do the Wednesday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do it then. But we do upload it, or whatever that is. I never know whether to say upload.
I download it and then upload it.
See, that's what she does, onto YouTube. So you can go into YouTube, go into my YouTube channel. You'll find that, we have all of these shows, Rosemary Altea, and then Rosemary Altea's Kitchen. You'll find a few little cooking things that I do on there. We have to do more and more of those. We keep saying we're going to do it, but what with the pandemic and everything going on, we really haven't gotten around to doing much of that. But nevertheless, I do decorate a Christmas cake with my grandson, and I do show you how to make a risotto, and a mushroom risotto, and all sorts of other things that we show. And if you go on Instagram, you'll see that I was making, Michelle and I were making bacon sandwiches. And I should say, Michelle had a bacon and egg sandwich, the most perfect egg you've ever seen. I don't know what it tasted like, but
it was wonderful.
It was perfect looking. I hate my eggs to be brown on the bottom and slimy on the top. My mother used to throw them into hot fat and they just all crozzle up into nothing at all. Can't stand those, so I'm very particular about my eggs. But if you go onto Instagram, and you'll find me on Instagram, you can see the perfect egg and the perfect bacon sandwich too. Right, keep going, Michelle.
Jane said that she loved The Eagle and the Rose, recommended it to many friends. She's in Alternan on the edge of Bodmin Moor in Cornwall.
Oh, yeah.
Did I say those right?
I didn't hear what you first said. Bodmin Moor, I know.
And Alternan on the edge.
Okay. All right, then. We know Bodmin Moor. Thank you for letting me know.
Reese said that he's still watching and he loves you more. And that you know he loves you more.
No, actually, Reese, I love you more. That, just so you know, actually. And it's wonderful because I get the last say on this show, which usually doesn't happen.
Judith said that the healing meditations are wonderful and very uplifting.
Thank you. If you want to know more about our guided meditations, you can actually find, there are two of them now, A Journey Towards Healing and A Garden of Souls, and you can find them on iTunes, Amazon, all of those places where you find these things. You can find them there, and I don't think they're that expensive, a couple of dollars or something, whatever, but you can find them there, and they are really, even though it's me, it's my darling little voice putting you, sort of getting you into these beautiful meditations. They are great, and people do seem to love them. Inspired by a wonderful patient of mine, Wendy, who died of cancer, and she inspired me to do all of that stuff. Keep going, Michelle. We're
All right.
almost out of time, but we're going to keep going a little bit longer.
Bill said, Rosemary, was there a specific time in your journey with your gift when you first felt the potential to help people? Was it, somebody just hit, was it a special moment or story?
Well, here's the thing. I don't feel that my motivation is in helping people necessarily. Sorry to disappoint you all. I know you all think that I'm perfect, but I'm actually not. One of the things that I ask people who come to me, students who come to me, especially those who want to learn more about healing, and I say to them, why do you want to do that? If they say to me, well, because I want to help people, I feel that you know, if that's what you want to do, you can go to the nearest children's hospital, you can go to the orphanages, you can go, there's lots of places you can go to help people. I really feel that this is about learning and growing and becoming more and more of who you are in a spiritual sense. So my motivation initially was to just to learn and to grasp. It was not, I didn't even think twice about helping other people, sorry, but I didn't. But I had, and if you look in The Eagle and the Rose, I had something that happened to me extremely early on. This was before I even began to do this on a professional basis. And the story is about a vision that I had, and a lady on a boat, and I shall maybe tell that story in 2 or 3 weeks' time, because I actually, and again, this is a vision, this is sort of when you don't expect it, and I did this in a room full of people. If I'd known I was going to do it, I would have never gone to this place, because it was embarrassing and it was horrible, and I hadn't yet come out, let's say. Nobody knew who I was, and to have this vision, but I clearly to this day remember the intensity of that vision, and I clearly remember the intention of this lady, a lady in a grey dress, with no face that I could see, no features, but I could see her clearly, and she was standing on the boat on this ship, and the ship was sinking. It was definitely going down, and she's standing on the deck of the ship, and she's reaching out her hands to me, and the pleading in her voice is something that I'll never forget. And she was pleading, help us, please, please help us. And that happened 3 times consecutively, and it moved me to a point where later on I realized that people come to me for all sorts of reasons. They come because they've lost their children, they've come because they are sick. Of course I want to help them, of course I do this, you know, I'm a nice person, that is my role, is to try to help them. But first and foremost, above and beyond anything else, my responsibility is to those in the spirit world, and to help those in the spirit world, and to be their voice. So when you come to see me, you might not get what it is you want. You'll always get what you need, but you might not get what it is you want, because my responsibility is first and foremost to repeat, to try to describe in whatever way I can, or to show whatever it is that they have to say, that they want to say to the rest of us here. So I guess it's about helping them, but it was never originally about helping anybody. It was just about learning, growing, being intrigued, and so on and so forth. And when it was first suggested to me that I should be a healer and go into hospitals, no way, that, you know, absolutely no way. Being sick myself, I'd had enough of that. I didn't want to go in there and do that. And yet I will walk into any unit in a hospital now and be completely unafraid. The burns unit is one of the worst. The children's units are awful. Some of the awfully deformed, terrible situations that we see, I'll walk in anywhere, because I know that I'm walking in the light, I'm walking with God. I've got Gregor by my side. My daddy is somewhere around there as well. And so, you know, it's easy to be brave when you've got people around you who help you to be brave. I think I answered that question. We've got time for maybe one or two more, Michelle.
Sarita said that Ed and Lorraine Warren were paranormal investigators that you might have heard of because they were involved with the Amityville case.
No. But if you'd like to send me a link somewhere, I'll take a look and see what I think.
Dean said that he's off and bye for now. He's going to enjoy his day.
Me too.
Reese said, "How dare you?" with the face.
Well, my darling boy, I dare because I do love you, love you, love you more.
Jane said, "Sorry if I'm repeating something which I missed, but wondering what Grey Eagle's advice is to us to help us through the pandemic."
Be kind, be gentle, don't allow fear to freeze you. I'm listening to anything else that he has to say, and just live your lives. Be normal and live your lives. Get on with it and live your lives. You can't die before your time. Just remember that, everybody. And I think on that note...
Well, there was one more question.
Go on, one more. Quick.
Maggie would like to know, has
Yes.
Samantha ever told you from her point of view what it was like when you were learning your gift and when Grey Eagle began to mentor you?
Oh, she's often told me, Maggie. She holds it against me sometimes. Yes. Here, I'll tell you this one brief story about what it was like for my daughter, which you can imagine being a child living with me. So she comes into the kitchen one morning, and I don't know, it's maybe I'm trying to think, she might have been sort of 12 or 13 or something. And so, you know, she came in, she's dressed, she's ready, and I looked at her and I said, you know, did you clean your teeth? And she paused for a second, and then she said, yes. And my father was writing a big no over the top of her head. So I look at her again and I say, are you sure you cleaned your teeth? And she just knew that I know. She says, no, I'll go and do them now. Imagine being a kid and a teenager and you can't get away with a thing. Can you imagine that? So, you know, it was tough for her, but she loves it just the same. That's it. We are done. So, if you want to see more of me, you can go to my YouTube channel, or you can look on Facebook on the main page, or on the healing page. You can find out all about me. If you need to know anything at all, or you'd like a consultation, or you know, and all the rest of it, if you have a story to tell, we'd love to hear it. Email me, Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com. And we are here Wednesday afternoons at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time, 1:30 p.m. Saturday morning, 11 a.m. We had our lovely Jeff on our Everything is Attitude, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Thursdays, we do our Everything is Attitude show. And if you want to join us or be on, or to tell a story, or to share anything at all, again, email me, Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com. Please put the subject that you want to talk about or that you want to know more about in the subject line. It helps Michelle to sort it out. We should be here next Saturday morning with the second half of the Circus story. I hope that Reese loved the Circus story. Please, I can see all of this stuff coming up, but I'm ignoring everybody now because
everybody's just saying have a wonderful day.
Thank you. And please, everybody, have a very blessed rest of the day. Have a fantastic, what is it, Memorial weekend? Do you say Memorial or Memorial Day?
Memorial Day is
whatever
Monday.
That is. I'm British. What do I know? Enjoy the rest of your week and have a very, very blessed rest of the weekend. And Reese, my darling, he always gets the final word. I'm sorry, everybody. I am a proud mother and a proud grandmother. So to my darling daughter and to my ever precious darling boy, I love you. I love you, I love you, I love you, and I'll be talking to you in a minute now. Yeah, oh wait, and I love you more. Bye everybody.